Thank you all for joining us today. This is our first webinar on entrepreneurship, powered by STEM and STEAM with an A, and driven by circular economy sustainability. So this is our flagship program, and this is going to go on between now until November, I think, and we can keep going if you guys like this series. So every week we'll have speakers covering topics related to technology and in connection to circular economy. Technology, we in order to talk about technology, we also have to analyze the technology and look at technology relevance to sectors. So value chain is very important, and that we need to do in our analysis on, and supply chain. And also we got to have that strategic mindset to move forward. So we will cover topics on mindset, system thinking, strategic thinking, critical thinking, and also to go down into the value chain of from the whole life cycle of a product, from extraction, production, distribution, consumption, and end of use and end of life, to really close the loop. And today we have two of our leaders in STEAM platform. And the first speaker is Arslan Siddique, is our program manager of STEAM platform. And Arslan is passionate about education, passionate about circular economy and technology. And he's doing, well, you're in your final year now, right? Last year of PhD in exciting research related to biotech. You're going to tell us about your exciting research in Australia. And he was at our KMUTT, King Mongkut University of Technology, Tombodi, when we started. So he's one of our founding leaders in STEAM platform. So we're very happy to have him here to share with us his learning and his practice in value chain and supply chain analysis in the sectors that are relevant to you guys. All right, Arslan, over to you.
Thanks, Levin. Okay, let me just start sharing my screen. So tell me if you can see everything okay. Noon, you could do the spotlight if you want to, so I can see myself and the presentation. Hang on, presenter view. Okay, so now you see my screen, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Noon could do the spotlight if she wants to at any point. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. The first talk is going to be about value chain mapping and technology analysis. I don't think I would need to introduce myself. I think Levin has already done that, but just because it's being recorded, so I would say that I am a third-year PhD student here at the UNSW Australia, and I have been with STEAM platform since 2018, mostly doing technology analysis and the value chain mapping for past many years. So before we start this lecture or sort of a webinar on this value chain mapping, I would want to give you, I want to tell you a little story. And that story is the story of a researcher. You know, I would want to tell you what's the importance of a big picture. Why do we need to talk about big picture? I think we all would admit that all of us researchers are very good in the science and technology. We understand what we're doing. We have all these very cool, nice research projects that we're doing. I believe all of you are doing. And we have the domain knowledge. We understand we are the experts in what we're doing as researchers, and we do very focused experiments. You know, even somebody working in a biofuel sector would be working on a project like conversion of some bio waste into some valuable product. So that's just one project. So that's a very focused experiment. In a similar way, in this research group, if we have got 5 or 6 people, all of them are working on different topics, but under the same domain. So they are the experts only in those focused experiments, and definitely they do create R&D breakthroughs. Now, personally, I think one of the some of the things that I have identified with the researchers, I would like to highlight in here. Now, I'm not going to read it out for you, but I think the researchers today lack some of the things. First of all, they lack the big picture thinking. As I said, I think you would all agree on that. We do very focused experiments. We do have the domain knowledge, but we do not understand where do we fit in a big picture. We understand we're working towards making, you know, transportation better or biofuel better, but we are not very specific about exactly where do we stand. And that's called positioning. I will talk about that later. And the other thing that's missing with the current scientific researches is the life cycle thinking. We do not have that holistic point of view on the things that we're doing. How do we fit into that entire big picture? And then the other thing that we lack is the strategic communication skills. And I think that's one of the purpose of designing this training program, to instill that strategic communication skill in all of the researchers. And I believe that majority of you who are enrolled in this program are researchers, entrepreneurs, who are working on all these cool scientific projects and a lot of the other cool technical stuff. And we're not really good at research commercialization, and we do not have those high-tech entrepreneurial skills for us to move forward. And every time we talk about science communication with people who do not understand science, they're always like, I'll put that meme in here. So every time we talk about science, we pull up these graphs, we have these really nice microscopic images that we want people to see, but they look really cool. But if you want people to understand that what you're actually doing to have some impact with what you're doing, you need to tell it in a way that people would actually understand. Do not just pull up these graphs and these images, that layman, people who do not understand science, would have no idea about. So that's my understanding of the big picture thinking, and I think that is very, very important. And I think Mark has got a lot of stuff on that. You would listen from him more about that in the next webinar after me. So this is how I think researchers are currently positioned. That's what they know, and these are the things we lack. So these are the problems that I have personally identified. Now we need to do something about it. We need to understand the big picture, develop these commercialization skills, knowledge convergence, develop all these kind of skills. So that's researcher that I have put a picture of there. That was actually me back in 2017. I was working on the microfluidic devices, and that's me in the nanofabrication facility room. So that picture was taken by my supervisor there. But over the years, I've been through that journey, and I've been learning and still learning these strategic communication skills and all the other skills that we lack, apart from the it's beyond the research and technical knowledge that we have. Now, let's talk about the value chain. Now, so value chain is basically a big picture. Now, before we talk about analysis, let's first understand what a value chain means. Well, value chain is basically the set of activities that we do to create a product or service or anything. Let's say somebody is working on making biofuels, or somebody is working on making plastic bottles or plastic cans, whatever product you're making, that's the end product. And that product, to make that product, that has to go through a process. That process is called the value chain. Now, when we talk about analysis, why do we need to do analysis of the value chain? So analysis refers to the evaluation of all the activities that are happening within that value chain. For example, it could be any product, doesn't have to be plastic. It could be this phone, or it could be the laptop that you're watching me on at the moment. So that's the product. That product has got a lot of components in it. It has got electronics, it's got this nice keyboard, the touchpad, the monitor, and all these things. And all these different components of a product were sourced from somewhere. And that source is we call raw material. We dig the ground, we take out all these components, and then we process that, we make a product, we consume it, and we dispose of as waste. Similar thing, I've put up an example of a plastic waste in here. We all understand that the plastic is made from the oil, and the oil is extracted from digging the ground. Now that oil is refined and processed and made into plastic bottles and all the other plastic products. We as consumers consume it and we throw it away. We all know that where that plastic ends up, right? We all understand that now, because this has become a big movement, and people have started to understand what happens to that plastic we throw away. Now, the thing that I would want to describe in here, that waste that we dispose of is actually not a waste. So I like memes, so I have put in one meme here for you. I wouldn't read it, I would want you to read it out. So what I want to say here is that actually people currently think that the products that we're using today, when they reach the end of the life, we can throw it away in the trash. That becomes the trash. So that's the thinking that we're actually trying to change in people's mind. Now, the process that you're looking at your screen, from raw materials, processing, product, all the way down to the waste, is it represents a model. If you look at it, that's a linear model. We call it the linear economy, and that's exactly the economic model that we're going through, and we need to change that model. So that's why value chain analysis is very important. We need to evaluate all of these activities all across the value chain and see where the opportunities of the improvements are. and how we could, do we have the enough technology? If we have the technology, what else we need to do to make sure that the products that we're making are much better than the ones that we had before, and they have no or very less environmental impact. And that is the true essence of what we call the circular economy. So circular economy is not just about putting these things into a circle. So what that means is looking at waste as a resource. Now, it could be, in this case, it's a plastic waste, that waste could be used as a raw material as it is. As you might see product in your daily lives, the plastic bottles and all these things have been made from recycled plastic. But not just that, we need to think beyond that and see how we can actually channel that waste into different components of the value chain to make that product. Now, it involves a lot of things. This is a very simplistic overview of what we mean by a circular economy value chain. So putting things into the loop, using waste as a resource, and then we could have design innovations. For example, maybe the products that we're making are not better designed. So somebody, an artist or somebody who has a design skills, can come up with an idea to design that product better, and that can enable or improve that production efficiency. Now, there's a lot of things associated with that. I'll put up these words all around for you to read out. We would need innovations. We need to do capability analyses. We need to understand what technology exists in the market. And if you have got the technology, what's so good about your technology that can help address this issue? What is your competitive advantage? And all these things. We'll talk about that in a bit in the next few slides. Now, we had asked you in the previous wrap-up session that what sectors you're interested in. A majority of you said that you're interested in the food and agriculture sector, and some of you said you're interested in the healthcare sector. Now, if you look at the healthcare value chain, the healthcare value chain is very complex. It looks much similar to the other ones, but it's very complex. The individual components are similar, raw materials, we need to make a product, we need to process that, then we have a waste, and then what do we do with that waste? And then along the value chain where we can innovate. Now, in healthcare, there are two things. There's diagnostics and there is therapeutics. So diagnostics, we need lots of equipment to do that. COVID-19, as we all understand, we need these COVID kits to test it better. And, people are coming up with these ideas with these, very cool kits that can detect the virus within a matter of a few minutes, so we don't have to do those PCR testing and all those kind of things. So that's one example of the diagnostic innovations in COVID-19. And in therapeutics, what happens is that the pharmaceutical compounds that we make to treat those diseases are not very much environment friendly. Now, what's happening in healthcare value chain is that healthcare sector does not look at the environmental impacts of those pharmaceutical products. So the thing that's lacking here is the pre-consideration of those environmental impacts that it can have on the environment. Just one example, asthma inhalers. So these are little devices that people carry who have problems with breathing and all that. So they carry that with them. And these, devices are designed in such a way that they contain a chemical that helps you breathe properly if you have those issues. Now, there are chemicals that are used in these asthma inhalers, because I'm personally working in the asthma space in my PhD, and I understand that there are some chemicals that are used in these devices that are 3,000 times more toxic to the environment than one carbon dioxide. So it has a huge impact. There was one of the studies done on this. One inhaler the impact that it can have on the environment is actually equivalent to driving a car 180 miles. So imagine we have millions of people using these devices in the healthcare. Not just that, we have lots of other devices that patients use and all the other pharmaceutical compounds. So imagine how big of an impact it can have on the environment. So the purpose of doing this value chain analysis and value chain mapping is to basically understand each component of the value chain, and then come up with the innovation, see how we can change, how we can sustainably change that value chain, and how we can, basically do some individual contribution to make that happen. So that was just a quick overview of what a value chain looks like and what are the components of value chain and what's the purpose of the value chain mapping and what that tells us. Now, the next slide, that brings us to the story time. So I just want you to watch this YouTube video. I'll stop sharing my screen and I will go share my, hang on. Sorry, I think we're running out of time. I'm trying to share my screen. Let's see if we can go this way.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meeting starts in 10 minutes. Or you're cramming for an exam the night before, but can't bear to keep your eyes open to read one more textbook chapter.
Okay, let's see.
And bio.
Okay, tell me if you have problems listening to it.
Smart circular economy. The sugarcane story. I loved the taste of sugarcane juice when I was a child. We usually connect sugar to sweets and tasty drinks. Recently, I learned from our engineers in KMUTT Bangkok that sugarcane is used to produce biofuel for cars, biogas for cooking, and biomaterials for packaging. Everything in sugarcane, from juice, bagasse, and straws, is useful. Now, let us follow the entire life cycle of a sugarcane. We prepare the soil using biofertilizer processed from sugarcane waste, such as straws and bagasse. We deploy IoT platform to monitor the growth environment for optimizing high throughput and sustainable growth with data analytics. We use advanced robotics for harvesting, adopt sustainable supply chain management, and digital factory for smart processing. Cane trash collected is burned to generate heat and electricity, and the ash is used as biofertilizer. Sugarcane is processed to extract juice for making sugar and other derivatives, leaving the bagasse in wastewater. The wastewater is anaerobically digested to generate biogas. The bagasse is fermented to produce ethanol or biochemicals, or processed into biomaterials under catalytic or enzymatic digestion and fractionation for packaging. Sugarcane is much more than just juice and cake. It can also generate bio-based and value-added products, including biofuel for vehicles, biogas for heating and cooking, electricity for lighting, and polymers for clothes and plastics. Its waste can be processed into valuable green products, such as biofertilizer, biomaterials, and bioenergy. We hope you have enjoyed the story of the smart circular life of sugarcane and appreciate the Sustainable Development Goal number 12, Sustainable Production and Consumption.
Okay, that was a great
Arslan,
video.
can I just interrupt? I just want to comment on this. So everyone, this animation is produced by our group of students. Arslan was leading the value chain analysis and helping creating this animation of this whole value chain mapping. So those of you who are here, if you're students or if you're professors, it doesn't matter what background you have, I just want to emphasize that anyone can do this analysis and help us understand the whole life cycle of any product that you want to analyze. So it's not that difficult. So this is why we run this workshop, to share with you that this is done by students. You can do it. Everyone can do it. Back to you, Arslan.
Thanks, Lemon. Yes, anybody can do that. Okay, let me go back to my presentation where I left off. All right. So, okay, presenter view. Hang on. Do you see my entire screen, or you just see the slide?
I think we saw your slide.
You just see the slide, yeah, the story time slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because it's showing me that yellow thing around. It looks like it's showing me the entire screen. Okay. Yeah. So there was the story of the sugarcane that explained what we can extract from sugarcane. Sugarcane is not just the juice that we talked about. So I'm not going to go over this in detail. I think you've watched in the video.
Yeah, Arslan, sorry, it's not full screen.
Not full screen. Ah, yeah, okay.
No, hang on. What did I do?
Yeah, okay, better.
Wait a bit. I think Zoom is playing up today.
Restart like I did.
Okay, now you should be able to see that. That shouldn't be an issue. How is it now? Right. Okay, now you should be able to see my slide, do you?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so what we showed you in that video is basically the value chain of the sugarcane. So I'm not going to explain that in detail. What I would want you to understand is that we started with the raw materials. So if you understand my basic introduction of the value chain, you would know that I said that we need raw materials. And in production of sugarcane, we would need the soil, we need the land. Sorry, we need soil, we need water, we need the sunlight to harvest. And then we do some post-harvesting, which is the next step in the value chain. Then we transport that into the factories where it is processed, crushed, and then we get a product. And the product of sugarcane is basically the juice. And that sugarcane syrup or juice can then be processed into making sugar, into molasses, what we call food. Now, that's the story that we all know about, right? We know that, okay, sugarcane, it's a sweet, nice drink, and it has sugar. We do lots of things with it. We can make cakes and donuts and all that. But basically, what I want to emphasize here is that there are so many things along the value chain that are also very, very important. When we were squeezing out the sugarcane to take out that juice, there was sugarcane bagasse, there was wastewater in it. Now, what do we do with that? Now, there's so many alternative pathways that can be put into. Now, for example, bagasse can be fermented into bioethanol, as it's explained in the video. We've got a process called anaerobic digestion that helps us make biogas. It can be burned to make heat and bioelectricity. It can be catalytically digested into polymers. That polymers like cellulose and lignocellulose, they can help us with lots of things, So that is biofuel, bioenergy, biomaterial. Now, the extra waste that we end up with in those processes can further be fed back into the soil. So that basically completes that loop. So if you look at this is basically a circular economy value chain. This is a value chain, but it's mentioning the individual components that contain within that sugarcane value chain. So wastewater and all these sort of things. So these are the alternative pathways that we wanted to show you that are present. So when you think about a product, think about all the steps in that value chain and see what is there in the, not just a product, in the processing. What are we doing with the waste? Okay, if we have a product, we throw it away, then what do we do with that? So thinking about all these different steps in the value chain is critical in the circular economy value chain. So that was just a small intro of what it looks like, because a lot of you said you were interested in food and agriculture value chain. I think we've done lots of analysis on that as well. So that was a quick overview of what it looks like. Now, we have done this value chain analysis. We understand what it means. We know that what we can do, there are alternative pathways. Now, as a scientist, you can come up with technology, you can come up with design innovation and all that. Now, but before you do that, you need to have done your market research properly. I heard that Bob, somebody here who's done marketing, I think he can help explain what marketing means here. But marketing is basically, market research is sort of a tool that helps us understand what is existing in the market. Now, what's different about circular economy market research is that you always look for sustainability. The product that exists in the market, is it sustainable or not? Or the product that I have built up as an entrepreneur, is it adding value to enabling circular economy or sustainability? That could be your unique point about your project or about your product. Doesn't matter whichever sector you're working in. If you belong to healthcare, plastic and packaging, building and construction, whatever, all the sectors need transformation. They need transition to circular economy. And we as researchers, as entrepreneurs, are going to come up with products and tools that will enable that. So when you're doing your market research, please make sure that you do consider that element. Now, how do we do market research? In this world today, the internet world is extremely important to understand how we do it. Now, we've got this internet, we could simply do a desktop research. Now, Kanok, for example, here can come up with an idea, say, oh, I have this biofuel project that I'm doing. Now I have made up this catalyst, that helps converting the bio waste into the biofuel. Now I can ask her back, have you done your market research properly? Is there anybody else in the world or in your country, why did you come up with this innovation? So market research is very, very important. And I know all of us in our early 20s, late 20s understand how important social media is in our lives. So if you can't find something on Google, just go on social media. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram combined have got over 5 billion users. And that can help you understand. If you're thinking you are the best, you have got all that nice, cool product, please do a bit of market research and understand how you're different from rest of the rest of the market. And that's what we call competitive analysis. Do a bit of competitive analysis. Be very specific about how you're different from rest of the existing products in the market. Just having a title of a circular economy and sustainability with your products is not going to help. You need to have an in-depth analysis to understand what your product looks like. And there's an analysis called SWOT analysis, which stands for, in business terms, people in business school interpret it differently than us as scientists. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can go out and, because this is another worth of half an hour lecture, so I'm not going to give details, but SWOT analysis basically is an in-depth analysis that helps you understand your product better. You accept your strengths, then also understand your weaknesses, understand the opportunities, and see where the threats lie as well, because that's the only way you can get into the market with your product. And if you don't have it done properly, then you're going to be in trouble. That's what happened to one of the coffee giants, Starbucks. And I'm not going to explain that again, but you can go search on Google why Starbucks failed in Australia. They had this very nice brand and all that, but they failed very badly in Australia. Okay, let's talk about technology analysis. We've got about 10 to 15 minutes left, so I'll go through that. So having talked about value chain analysis, market research, and competitive analysis for the products that you've got, now the next very important thing for researchers in here in particular is the technology analysis. If you're working in a biofuel sector, if you're working in the plastic and packaging, whatever product you have got, you need to do a systematic analysis of that product, the process, the technology. Always start with why. Remember that in the last session that we've had with you, Lervin was asking you, what do you care about? Why do we have to care about this? You can come up with, oh, I have this plastic innovation technology, or I've got this beautiful app that helps us do this and that. First question we're going to ask, or anybody that's going to ask, is why? Why should we care about it? What is the problem statement? Now, the next question that we're going to ask you is what? What is your solution? First, you tell me, because Joe, I remember last time he came on, he said he really cares about people who are suffering from obesity. Knock can come up with a product saying that, we have all these chemical fuels that we're using, they're bad for the environment, blah, 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 whatever. Now, what is your solution? Be very specific about how you're addressing or solving that problem that you identified. The next question is going to be how. It's very important to remember this organization. You can take note of it. How? What does your innovation contain? And that's where we as technology analysts will basically do a postmortem of your technology and see what it contains. What are the components? How are you different from the rest of the people? What does the market say? What is the potential of your product to go into the market? And what is the impact? What is your business model? How are you going to sell it? Who are your customers? Who's going to care about this product in general in the market, nationally and internationally? And sustainability. Always, I can't stress that enough. Sustainability is very, very important. So take note of this. That is the organization, that is the structure that we would expect in everybody's project. Why, what, how, and impact. And tell us, how does your solution enable circular economy and sustainability? How do you contribute? And be very specific about which sustainable development goal you are addressing. For example, if somebody's working in a plastic sector and they have got this cool technology that is helping preventing the plastic leaking into the oceans, then there's a sustainable development goal called life under ocean. So you are actually enabling that goal, or helping that. So be very, very specific, and sustainability, do not overlook that. That's going to be very, very important in your project. Why, what, how, impact, and sustainability. So that is the summary of the technology analysis that we would expect from your projects. Now, I want to give you a quick couple of examples in here just to show you what it looked like, because we have worked with several students, researchers in KMUTT in the past. I have personally interacted with them. And we follow the exact same structure that I just showed you. So if you look at this one slide, that one slide completely explains what one person's project is. If Kano comes up to me, or Joe comes up to me, or Pop, or anybody who has got a nice project or research project that they're working on, give me just one slide about following that structure, why, what, and how, and that one slide will completely explain me how do you stand out, where do you position, which sector you belong to. For example, in here, this student came up with a project called floral flavored alcohol beverage. So this is basically an alcoholic beverage that has a smell of a flower when you drink it. Now, the first thing I asked her is, why do we need to care about it? What is so special about your project? Why? What is the problem statement? Then she told me that she has got this project. She got interested in the project because she's using raw material, the waste as its raw material. So she isn't using all the other existing things that people use to make alcohol. She was using the discarded waste, and that waste was soybean waste. That was cool. I understood the problem. Okay, that's a problem, it's a waste. If you're utilizing waste as a resource, that's a cool project. Now, tell me, what exactly are you doing? Then she told me, after a bit of meetings and all these, in-depth technical analysis, she came up with this, okay, I have this flowering species that nobody else has ever used before. They've been working on the other species, and this particular species gives that particular floral flavor in that alcohol. Okay, I understood why, I understood what. Now tell me, how do you do it? What is the process? So if you look at that, these are the big details, so I wouldn't want to go into the details of it. Now that process tells me, and identifying that process where exactly your innovation is. Be very specific. Then she told me, oh, there is an ester compound that is produced in that process that actually gives the flavor to the alcohol. Okay, at this point, I understood that the problem statement, what she was doing, how she was doing it, how she was solving that problem. The next thing was the market analysis, market research. Now tell me, how are you different from the rest of the people who already have this kind of method developed? Then she had listed out this in a table, traditional and then soybean waste. And then she said, oh, my process actually helps it decreases the process time. There is less investment cost, and then the less production cost, and there's a new flavor that I'm introducing. Very cool. I understood she had done the market research. She told me she got that project, and then I'll identify who your customers are. So these are the logos in here. You can see. She said, okay, these are the potential players in the market. And I said, okay, what is going to be your contribution if you come up with that project? Then of course we need some strategic communication skills. We need marketing skills and all that to transition from being a researcher, having a research project to go into the market. And I believe all of you have got these research projects, but we need to be very specific, do very in-depth analysis, and then come up with this one slide. If you come up with these long 30 minutes presentations, nobody's going to look at it and care about it. So if you come up with one slide like that, with the structure that I just explained, that is going to help us address, and that will help us help you better through the rest of the trainings. One quick example, it doesn't have to be a part, it could be anything. For example, the training program that we're running here, you can come up to me and tell me, hey, there are lots of training programs going on in the world. Well, I can tell you in one table how we're different. STEAM platforms trainings are different from the rest of the people, and I have got these key features in here. I know the players, I know the countries they're working in, and we know ourselves. Then we can easily differentiate from ourselves from rest of the trainings that are going on in the world. So this is how you need to do your comparative and competitive analysis. So these are some of the examples of the students that we had worked with in the past at KMUTT. So this is the work done by the undergraduate students. So these projects were basically the patents that were owned by the KMUTT, and we trained our students in such a way to follow the structure that I just showed you, why, what, and how. And we asked them to do that in-depth analysis and come up with the poster. And that's the product that they came up with. And it looks really cool. Now, visually, these posters might look different from each other, but because once I send that presentation to you, you can go through the details. Each one of these posters contains the exact same structure that I just showed you. Why, what, and how, comparative analysis, innovation analysis, the impact, and then the sustainability and circular economy. How do you address that? So I think that's something that we would expect from you as well as we head towards the end of the training. Not just that, but Levin has got some plans to help you, have some tangible impact with your product and actually commercialize it. So these are the examples of how we do technology analysis and how we do value chain mapping, why market research is important, why we need to have a structure, and why we need to have that critical strategic thinking while we're talking about products. And that's, I think, the purpose of designing this training program. Okay, so I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes on the next few slides because I'm already approaching towards the end of my presentation. So one quick example I would want to show you from the value chain mapping work that I had done previously back in late 2018, early 2019. So this is the mapping that we did for one product. For example, biogas, it's a one product. Now, to make biogas, there are some raw materials involved. If you look at those little components in there, they have the same structure as I showed you in the beginning. The cassava in here is a raw material. This is a process called anaerobic digestion. These are the intermediate compounds. And this is the final product. And then there are users, and then there's a waste. Now, in circular economy, as I said, we're thinking about using waste as a resource and thinking about injecting that into different bits of that circular economy value chain. Now, the purpose of sharing this slide is to tell you that all of you have come up with some certain capabilities. Now, Kanok is really good at converting bio-waste into biofuel. Now, somebody else in here is very good in food processing. That is her capability. Somebody here is extremely genius about the food, about the organic produce, fruits and all that. So we identify your capabilities first, and then we position you in that value chain. Because all alone, if you're focused on just one particular experiment, you wouldn't know the big picture. You wouldn't know where you stand. So this is what we call zoom in and zoom out. So we, in a similar way, would position you like the way I did these researchers from KMUTT. They all have different capabilities, but all of them, if we put them together, position them and converge them in such a way in the circular economy value chain, they are basically improving the biogas production. The goal is to improve the biogas. For example, one researcher here, Trinot, she has this extremely good modeling capability. She can tell you what raw material is the best for that particular biogas production. Are you going to use cassava? If you use bagasse, what happens to that? So the modeling tells us. Now, this professor here has got microbes. The microbes for digestion of that organic waste that is going to help us produce biogas. And all the other people in here have got different capabilities. They've got design capabilities. Some have got very deep tech research capabilities that can, help us make that, improve that biogas production efficiency. So that's the capability mapping and positioning. Now, the next thing was the innovation. We can't just position people in the value chain. We have to do in-depth analysis. As I said, we need to understand their technology better. If Kano comes up to me and said that my capability is biofuel production, that is very generic. We would have to do very in-depth analysis to see exactly what is her innovation, look at her past 4 or 5 years work, and come up with numbers. You can't just say that, oh, I've built up this catalyst or I've built up this new technology that is helping or solving that problem. Please come up with numbers. You can't say my catalyst is good, it's efficient. How good? How efficient? Put that into numbers. And that's exactly what I did in the value chain mapping back then when I was doing it. For example, this guy, he said, okay, my catalyst actually yields the glucose. It increases from 56% to 86%. Well, that is a huge difference. If you're doing it like that, that matters for the market. If you're saying, okay, my process actually takes it from 56 to 58 or 60, well, not a huge difference, right? So then we need to see, does it matter for the market or not? So we need to see if it is making a huge impact or hugely improving one process. That is something that we need to work on and do some more in-depth analysis on that and see how we can take that to the market. In a similar way, I'm not going to explain that in detail as we're approaching the time so quick. So biofuel was another product that I had worked on, and Kanok, one of our trainees, has been working on this as well. Now, I don't know if she knows Professor Nawadol or not. He's one of the best in Thailand in the biofuel. And if she doesn't know, then it proves my point that I made in the first slide. I said that researchers actually lack these strategic communication skills, and they do not even, they just know people within their community or within their university. They do not know what is happening nationally or internationally. So if you want your product to go global, if you want your research project to have some global visibility, you need to build these national and international partnerships so that you can make that happen. So same thing for that. We did innovation analysis for biofuels as well. I think I can send that presentation to you. You can go through the details and find out exactly what we did. So I would like to conclude my presentation in here. We've talked about value chain analysis. We talked about value chain mapping, value chain positioning, market research, competitive analysis, technology analysis, and how we actually did it. I showed you some of the examples, and I will send that presentation. You can go through the details. All in all, we understand that understanding the big picture is critical. We need to have the life cycle thinking mindset, the sustainability mindset, and understand the big picture. Just zoom out a bit and see where you are positioned. What exactly are you doing, and how you're creating impact for a particular value chain. So that zooming in and zooming out helps us a lot. Now, moving from linear to circular economy is very much imperative at the moment. There is no option. We all understand that these climate crises and all these disastrous things going on in the world they're hugely impacting our environment and impacting the human life. So we need to move from linear model that I showed you in the second slide to circular economy. And all of our innovations, all of our activities, technology breakthroughs have to consider how we can make that go circular. So all the emerging technologies that we've got, all the extremely genius innovations that we are creating, please understand sustainability and circular economy and have your market research done properly. Do not just come up with projects that do not have any value. Come up with something, have a structure, and have some tangible impact with what you're doing. And that is the only way you can convince people. If you have that structure of what, why, what, and how, that will help you convince me or convince anybody else out there that what you're doing matters and how you're and then we can help you tracked your progress through that over the years. So that's a mindset that you need to build up. Finally, strategic communication skill always wins. Does not matter how cool technology you've got a market research done and all that, but if you do not have that strategic communication skill, you're not going to be able to build partnerships and you're not going to have global visibility. And I think that's the purpose of this training program, to take you through the process, to show you how you can be communicating strategically at the end of the training. So that's my message towards the end. I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you very much, everybody who paid attention for the last 30 minutes with me. Now let's chat a bit. Let's do some Q&A and see if you've got anything to ask me or if we can interact now. Thank you.
Thank you, Arslan. I guess you carry on with the poll Q&A.
Yeah, we do carry on with the Q&A. So if anybody has got a question, you want to interact or you want to say something, please do so.
All right. Thank you, Arslan. That was fantastic. There's more to deep dive into that. So if those of you, I will be also available. Basically, Arslan and I will operate in parallel. Those of you who would like to do a value chain analysis for your project, your product, your idea, select the slot next week, and we'll go move forward from there. All right, let me introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mark Foley. Mark Foley. So Mark and I we've been working together for 30 years now. We're both physicists by training, although he's an experimental physicist. We worked in Tokyo together back in the 90s. Now has spent a lot of time helping Japanese industry, big corporations also, as well as startups in their strategic marketing, corporate strategy with big picture. And he's passionate about doing that, and he's dedicated his life. I don't want to tell you how old Mark is, but he's been spending years and years of effort, and he's multilingual, at least fluent in English and Japanese. He writes and speaks fluent Japanese, and currently based in Tokyo. So he's speaking to us from Tokyo. So there you go. So we have Australia, Sydney, and Tokyo. There you go, and Bangkok. So he's going to share with us his insights and his practices, and to be really helpful for us here on strategic thinking. He's using his strategic mind and his experience working in Japan with big corp, small corp. All right, Mark. If you miss anything, you continue to elaborate. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. So I just put up my slides in full screen.
And also, sorry, forget, and Mark also does a lot of value chain analysis. So he's a key analyst, a chief analyst for my consulting company, NanoGlobe, as well as helping our other clients globally, doing a lot of technology analysis, market research.
Yep, thanks, Lewan. Can you hear me okay?
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm talking from Tokyo today. Thank you for your time. So today I just want to give you a few hints on strategic thinking. There's going to be a lot of ideas in there, so hopefully I don't lose you. But just to give you hints for strategic thinking, or in many ways, it's again big picture, like Arslan was talking about. In Thai, I don't know if you're familiar with the English word big picture, but it basically means broad or wide, big, or the whole picture. See the whole thing of what's going on, can help you see what's going on and coming up ahead. So talking of big picture, I'm originally from Australia, like Lewan. And when I was a kid, I must have been a strange kid, I think, because I naturally had this big picture thinking. And it was quite big because it included the whole space and universe. So it's very big picture thinking. And at the same time, I asked questions, why? So I was a very noisy kid from my parents, asking questions of how. So I was asking deep questions that my parents usually couldn't answer. So like, since I was thinking such a big picture like the universe, I naturally thought of I used the alien example, right? So like when I was a kid, my parents were telling me, oh, eat properly at the dinner table, you need table manners when you're eating dinner at the table. And I would pull out the alien example. Like, an alien would eat dinner differently. An alien may eat through their nose, may eat through their teeth, eat through their toes. So I said to my parents, if an alien came to the dinner table, could you handle them? So of course my parents had no idea what I was talking about. But it turns out, thinking like an alien is probably the easiest way to get big picture thinking. Probably the easiest way for you guys to think. Like, what would an alien think of our Earth? What would an alien think of Thailand? What would an alien think of the situation you are dealing with now? It's probably the easiest way to get your picture into the big frame. So because I had this big picture thinking and deep questions, I naturally ended up in science, in physics, actually, asking these deep questions about everything. But also at an early age, I used this big picture thinking and questions to companies. So even when I was very young, asking, looking at companies with these and probing them with these deep questions, why is it good management? Why is it stupid management? So it turned out this big picture thinking and deep questioning is very much a strategic thinking process. So that's how I ended up, in business using strategic thinking, and ended up in Japan where they seemed to lack strategic thinking or lack of strategy in these companies. So this thought process was not useful just for science, but also for business. If any of you have similar, thinking processes, just remember that it may not just be useful in science, but in other walks of life like business. So the word strategic. So when you hear the word strategic, what do you think? What comes to your mind? Well, things like important, something important maybe, or key factors maybe have a deep meaning to be strategic. Maybe the essence of something. Essence again being the key factor of something.
Efficient?
Strategic, not really. Strategic, or maybe for you. For you, efficiency could be strategic. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And even looking at the word strategy. Now, I use just a simple definition for strategy. Now, for me, strategy is a story. So what kind of story? Well, it should be unique, at least. It should have some differentiation, as Arslan was talking about. How are you different? How are you competitive? What's your value added? And hopefully, how do you plan to become profitable? So even just looking at these key words are very strategic words. Because they're strategic words because they show your essence. They show the essence of your business or essence of what you're trying to do. So the strategic thinking can get you down to the essence of the issue. So as I found these deep questions, plus looking at the big picture can get you to the essence of the situation, to the basis of the issue that you're looking at. So strategic thinking needs not just analysis, which we all hear the word analysis, but synthesis. And you don't hear the word synthesis much, unfortunately. So when we talk about analysis, most people think, you're breaking down a situation into its components to try and understand it. Now, synthesis is sort of the opposite, building things back up, look at the whole picture. So people don't focus much on the synthesis. So to build things back up, to see the whole picture, of course, you're going to need some big picture thinking, be holistic, and looking at the whole picture. It could be complex, it could be chaotic. And maybe you can use some pattern recognition in there, or intuition, gut feeling. You may have feeling for this complex environment. Maybe creativity can help you through it. Similarly, imagination, which may lead to stories. From stories, you can build a big picture. And will, if you have to need a will to create something to go forward, and also judgment. So for judgment, you may need perspective or point of view to make a decision. So in analysis, it could be just look at the facts. You could break down the situation into the facts. But in synthesis, you may need things like judgment. You may have to make your own judgment of what's going to happen, not just the facts. So it's much deeper, this synthesis. And so this synthesis becomes key in strategic thinking. So of course you need both breakdown and then synthesis to build a whole story or a whole picture. So talking of breakdown, it seems, naturally engineers and also it seems management consultants love to break down the issues to find a cause. Fair enough, if it's, especially an engineering system. For example, you come up with an issue, like losing customers, and the companies break down the issue. Oh, is it a cost problem? A quality problem? What is it? So they make these trees of factors. They break down the cost in it, further components. So you get these trees of factors. And especially here in Japan, Japanese companies love, well, most of the big companies are run by engineers and engineering. So they all love these diagrams breaking down the issues. And, like a company like Toyota loves, this world, breaking down the issues, and they can be the best in the world at breaking down things like engineering problems. However, another big problem in Japan is that they didn't realize that in many cases, the cause of the problem is outside the box. The cause of, say, losing customers could be outside this box. So in many cases, it could be no strategy. Unfortunately, many Japanese companies had no strategy. They're working very hard to find the cause. Was it cost or quality? But in the end, the cause was outside the box. They had to think bigger of the fundamental cause was, say, no strategy or something fundamental like that. So when we get back to strategic thinking and synthesis, as I said, it could be a complex situation, a chaotic situation in the market out there. So you as the strategist come along to this chaos, right? And you got to do something with it. You got to find the way forward. So basically the job of the strategist is to find this way forward. Now, as I mentioned the keywords earlier, to find the way forward, you can use some of these keywords I mentioned earlier, from big picture thinking to judgment. So like in this case, you may have to make a judgment of where you want to go and why. So it's not, again, not just the facts. You may need will also to get there, and judgments. So it's a much deeper issue looking at the synthesis part of strategic thinking. Where do you want to go and why in this big picture, this big chaotic picture? So another point we should always remember is that the future does not exist yet. Now, you listen to many people in business or even media, they come up with, saying this is what's going to happen in the future, or come up with the numbers, or beautiful business plans, or beautiful forecasts for the future. But you have to remember, the future does not exist yet. So in many cases, all the numbers and so on, the figures that people produce may have no meaning. So especially the engineers out there love breaking down issues into the components. But if the future doesn't exist yet, then the issues of the future may not exist. So you can't break them down because they don't exist yet. So we need more synthesis kind of thinking. Also, the assumptions you have now may be different in the future. The values you have now may be different in the future. So you may not be able to use more logical thinking to work out the future, to work out your strategies for the future. So that's why we talk about big picture thinking. We're asking deep questions. And again, some of the key words like intuition may be needed. So intuition can usually come from deep, not just knowledge, but experience, that you feel it in your bones or you feel it in your stomach if you know something well enough. Maybe it needs imagination to get to the future. And again, maybe judgments are needed. So just remember, some people in business, show all these beautiful or PowerPoint slides and figures and facts and stuff. But just remember, the future does not exist yet. So in many ways, you try and understand the future, but at the same time, you have to create the future. And Lowen and I have worked for many years on particular, emerging technologies and so on. And especially in emerging technologies, or even presently circular economy, which is very new, it's a combination of this. You try and understand the future, but at the same time, you have to create the future for yourself. Just an example from synthesis, so creativity may be needed. And example from science. So science can be very much, focused down on, as Arslan said, focused down on your experiments. But in the case of science, instead of having an unknown future, you're basically dealing with the unknown, the unknowns of science, the unknowns of nature. So we go to experiments and we go say, look, from our experiment, we get these results. We look and say, what's going on there? What's going on? We can't understand it. So we do more experiments and get a few more results and still don't know what's happening. So more results. But the issue is, if we keep on focusing on this tiny part and going deeper, deeper, deeper with our experiments, we may not understand what's really happening. So at some point, maybe we have to stand back. Maybe we have to stand back and look at the big picture. So if we stand back and look at the big picture, in science, hopefully sometimes we hope we get a aha moment. Yes, aha, yes, found it, I understand. I'm not quite sure aha in Thai, but it's a flash of inspiration maybe, and you finally understand it. In this case, the structure of DNA, which I guess the scientists Crick and Watson, found this structure of DNA maybe in an aha moment. So a creative jump is needed. So it's not just focusing down on, little experiments. To really understand what's going on, you may need a creative jump. See the big picture. Now you understand the structure of the whole DNA here. So you hear some people talking about the scientific method, but in many cases they forget about the creative part. In many cases, to understand, you need a creative jump. If you don't have a creative jump, there'll be nothing new to discover. So the same thing for sustainability, looking small and looking big. An example from this year, in Japan, the Japanese government announced, carbon neutral targets for a few decades out. So of course, after the government announced that, all the Japanese companies announced that they would gradually phase out fossil fuels and shift to biomaterials or bioenergy based materials to become carbon neutral. So their idea, like in the cartoon here, is that the assumption that if they use, say, biomaterials from trees, they can go back and plant trees again, and it'll become a cycle, hopefully carbon neutral, they assume, by planting more trees. However, as I said, all the Japanese companies are announced going to go biomaterials, bioenergy. And so if every company in Japan makes the change and every company in the world shifts to biomaterials, what's going to happen? Think big picture. What's going to happen if all the companies in the world throw out fossil fuels and go to bio-based materials? The big picture, well, we hope they can use waste material, but waste may not be enough. So the possibility could be something like this, because there's more and more demand for, the biomaterials, especially at the moment. There's a lack of wood products, so someone's got to, dig out more forest. So in this case, renewable may mean it takes 1,000 years to renew these ecosystems and the animals who have died.
But irreversible, not renewed.
Yes, so
extinction of, biodiversity. That's a devastating consequence.
So you look at one company's announcement, and you think, oh, beautiful, brilliant, for the ecosystem. But if all the companies do it, it could be devastating. So again, that's one view of big picture thinking. If all the companies do it, if everyone in the world does it, what's going to happen? And just an example for pattern recognition, recognizing patterns in something. Now, from that big picture, we found a pattern of these companies. We found the pattern that everyone's shifting to biomaterials and energy. So then you can think logically. For those people who think logically out there, now's your chance to think logically. So you think over time, over a long time, what's going to happen? So if you found a pattern, just think what's going to happen over time to that pattern. 10, 20, 30 years, what's going to happen to that pattern? So just logically, you can think logically. Again, just following the pattern, you can end up there. So it's not just, big picture thinking, you can think big time thinking over long time scales. So for those who think logically, rather than more creatively, you can find a pattern and just take it forward over time. What's going to happen 10 years, 20 years? And if you do that, you can usually find the gap. From now and the future, say, oh, something's going to go wrong. There's going to be big issues coming up. So I usually find when you find a gap, it becomes motivating, especially if there's trouble coming up. On the other hand, in a different scenario, you may find interesting business opportunity by finding a gap between now and the future. So in that way, you can see, say, 10 years ahead. by finding the gap. Just if you find a pattern, take it forward 10, 20 years. You can see the future. So just an example from on an opportunity, say like here in Japan, there's no flat land. So you want to put solar arrays in, you basically knock the top off a mountain and put solar arrays on the top of the mountain. So you not only destroy the forests, but in Japan, you also have a big issue of landslides. And landslides every year, kill people or destroy villages. So there's obviously a big gap here, destroying mountaintops and destroying forests. But that gap, you think that gap can also be an opportunity. Instead of why don't we put solar on all the roofs of all the houses in Tokyo? Or Bangkok could be similar. There's a lot of land there, or the roofs of the buildings, just put solar on it. So that's a business opportunity. Now it can be more difficult business-wise than doing things mega. You have to go to each building and do it. But there's a lot of space out there. I'll just show you Tokyo now. Just show you Tokyo. So there's Tokyo. So look at all that space you could use for solar.
Well, we can't see. I only saw your slide. We probably have to go back to the
don't worry then.
camera. Are you trying to show out of the window or something?
Yeah.
Oh, you can stop that and we can see you instead. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Can you show it again? Because I was focusing on your slide. Can you show it again? Because I want to see. Window.
So if you look at my.
Okay, yeah. Outside of your window. Oh, yeah.
So look at all that real estate you could use for solar. It's just wasted space.
Yeah. Still Tokyo.
But someone has to go building by building to put solar on each building.
Yeah. I can show out of my window here, 25 floor. So
yes.
Lots of surface, lots of rooftops. I'm on top of, I can see all the rooftops actually, swimming pools and things.
So I'll just get back to that. So if you find a gap between now and the future, it could either be a threat or an opportunity. But another key point I want to make is, don't worry if you don't have a strategic mind or a big picture mind. Everybody's brain circuitry is different. Right? So we talk about STEM or STEAM, but in fact, science and engineering, it's 180-degree different thinking from scientists and engineers. So my father is an engineer, and he couldn't understand my thinking, my big picture thinking or strategic thinking. So everyone is different, and of course everyone's brain circuits are different. There's only one of you in the world, so you're very unique, very special to have. It's one person in the world with your brain circuitry. So there's something only you can do. So the key really is to build teams of people with different thinking. So thrive on that difference. Every single brain is different. So go away and think, what is your way of thinking? What is your difference in the way you think? Because there's only one in the world of you. So when you're building a team, you can just, even if you don't have strategic thinking yourself or big picture thinking, find someone who has big picture thinking. You know, find someone who, maybe an engineer who likes breaking down issues. Or find a person who loves the details, that, you know, making perfect something. Or find people who love dealing with other people. Or sometimes, you know, bring in the alien, you know, the alien thinking. You know, as I said, it's probably the easiest way to have big picture thinking. You know, think, what would an alien think in this situation? It's probably the easiest way to get towards big picture thinking. So that's just most of my presentation. Should we go to Q&A or?